Final Word Cricket Podcast, Adam Collins, Bharat Sundaresan. I have no idea what Geoff said, but I'm sure it was lots of fun. I know a way that Geoff's staying in touch around the world because I know that Geoff is a loyal user of NordVPN, which means that any subscription that Geoff's got around the world, primarily in Australia or in Portugal, one of the two countries where he resides most of the time, he can access all of them in the States, no matter where he is, easily able to transfer where he is, his virtual location on the go with those apps and websites and all the rest of it, because he's a NordVPN user. Daniel Norcross tells a lovely story on the next storyline to mix with our timelines here about how he used NordVPN when he was in the UAE recently. It reminded me of when we were able to use a VPN to get an entire international test match covered in Abu Dhabi through that mechanism as well. So they are very versatile things. Since you probably were last on the pod, Baz, the number of, you used to be able to get 6 devices on your Nord account. That's 10 now. And it used to be in 60 countries, now 111. So wherever you are around the world, be where you need to be. And because you're pals with us, you get the normal discount plus the additional 4 months, all there in the usual place, nordvpn.com/TFW. New users also receive a discount on NordVPN's new eSIM product, Saley. Now, I don't really know what that means, but eSIMs are a thing that people do. Cam Ponsonby, who works with us, he's a guy that uses eSIMs. Now, I think that just basically means you don't need to actually physically buy a SIM card. But Saley discount, you've got one, do you? I know what you can do is you can get a Saley discount as part of the discount on the NordVPN at the moment. This is all you need to know, really. The key thing is nordvpn.com/TFW. They've just signed on to work with us, I believe, for another few months, which is cool, which means plenty of you are taking up the discount, 30-day money-back guarantee. But why would you need it? Coming into the Aussie summer, you might be going on holiday somewhere. You might be jumping on that ambassador cruise between the 12th and the 19th of December, and you want to be in Honfleur, or you want to be in Amsterdam, and you want to actually really be watching Strictly Come Dancing. You want to be watching the finals of that. You might want to be having a holiday to where maybe you're going off to Bali for a little bit of time before Christmas with the family, but you want to stay in touch with what's going on what's a TV show in Australia, Brad? I'm so out of touch. Married at First Sight. That's a show that people watch, isn't it?
Or they want to watch like a repeat of Renegades Recruit where I'm trying to knock out middle stump. You never know.
There you go.
Like, yeah,
there you go.
You can use your VPN for whatever.
All this is available to you. nordvpn.com/TFW. Get yourself a VPN. Why would you not have one? I used it today. I use it most days. It's part of my rhythm of life, and I pay fuck all for it because I'm with NordVPN and I have their discount because, that's what we do. Right, Baz, next. I said we've got to go around the world. What's around the world in 80 days? We've got a lot of work to do in the last segment here, a lot of heavy lifting, but no one I'd rather do that heavy lifting with than you. Why don't we start with what on earth happened at Pune last week? India's first home series loss since 2012. I don't think anybody saw this coming. I mean, occasionally you see a rogue result. You're like, okay, and that 46 all out sort of felt like that. But for New Zealand to back up and do it again and hold their nerve with the bat twice, making 259 the first time, Conway Ravindra, 255 the second time, Latham. These are senior players stepping up and earning themselves a chance to knock off India. And then the Mitchell Sarton show, extraordinary. 13 wickets in a test match, having never taken more than 3 in an innings in his previous 47 attempts. I mean, it's a staggering story for the Black Caps. We've seen them play a lot in the flesh in the last 4 or 5 years, Baz, together. I'm stunned by this for all the right reasons.
No, I think in my living memory, I can't think of any team who's more or less dominated India in 2 back-to-back test matches at the start of the series, and then taken an overwhelming lead with a dead rubber. I mean, yes, I know you can talk about the WTC points and all of that, but purely in terms of this series, to get themselves in a position where they can go for the clean sweep. I mean, just look at the 4 countries who have, or 4 teams who won in India in this century. 2000, when South Africa won 2-0 in the two-match series, when my cousin made his debut in Mumbai, Murli Karthik did. India had chances in that Mumbai test. It was a very close, low-scoring contest, and Mark Boucher kind of just swept India out of the way, and they won by a narrow margin. Second test, Nicky Boy and South Africa dominated, but still, at least India ran South Africa close. 2004, yes, Australia had won 2-0 before you went to Mumbai. But Chennai, you remember, Virender Sehwag started very quickly and then the rain came. So at least India were in with a chance. And 2012-13, when England won, India obviously started the series strong and then England came back and won in Mumbai and Calcutta. But for what New Zealand have done, and that never happened during the 90s, right? India just like smashed everyone. So, but what New Zealand have done, two pretty comprehensive victories. And what you mentioned earlier, the fact that they were able to hold their nerve and ensure at every given point that they weren't playing catch up, tells you that this is probably the most dominant performance I've seen by a visiting team in India, with bat, with ball. I mean, to bowl India out cheaply in seaming conditions in Bangalore, and then bowl them out cheaply in spinning conditions in Pune, and then make India play catch up. And when India are pretty good at playing catch up at home, not kind of succumbing to that pressure, not letting the crowd get to you. I mean, amazing,
Yeah.
just a sensational performance. And yeah, so almost next year
Well,
it'll be
it's
40 years that I've been alive, but this is the best I've seen.
that come from behind point's a really good one, right? So we've been at Test cricket in India where they go behind on days 1 or 2, and look, they weren't that far behind the game, bowling out New Zealand for 259, right? That's a balanced result. It's akin to what the first innings was at Delhi last year, right? Which was, I think, scores were level, or maybe India had a very modest first innings lead before. They turned the screws in the second dig. That's what New Zealand prevented them from doing. It was the willingness of Latham, who I mentioned before. He's the new full-time captain. Then down the list, Blundell, 41, Phillips, 48 not out. This is the senior crux of New Zealand cricket right now, who have been left wanting from time to time since they won that World Test Championship final in 2021. But what an amazing way to stand up together as a collective. And I'm just thrilled to see that, when they were India set 358, there was another moment when Jaiswal's fucking flying. And we know this bloke's capable of anything. And I cannot wait to watch him in the Border-Gavaskar in a month's time or thereabouts. He's 77 from 65. And who gets him, Santner? It's the first of his 7 in the second dig. What was it, a 29 over spell when he's got a side strain? Third best figures ever away in India for an away spinner, 13 for 157. His match analysis. Latham saying afterwards that he's lost for words, and I kind of think that does sum it up, and it does change the dynamic of the World Test Championship ever so slightly. I mean, I know it's a bigger sample size for India playing more Test matches, and therefore they can absorb a loss or two. It does open the door a wee bit to New Zealand. Kane Williamson, sadly, is not going to play the third Test match, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, and on the other side of the ledger, Washington Sundar, and we'll come to the India Test squad for Australia in a moment, returning to the side, taking 7 for in the first innings and 11 in the match. I saw some stuff online where Rohit Sharma was asked about Ashwin and Jadeja having kind of implying they're a spent force. Are you kidding? I mean, Ashwin still took, I think, 5 or 6 wickets in the match, and Jadeja took a 4 for in the second dig or something like that. It was just that Sundar was the one that cashed in, and good on him for it. We saw how capable he is when he first played Test cricket in early 21, both in Brisbane and against England when they visited shortly thereafter. So they've got depth with the spin, there's no doubt about it, but different challenge coming to Australia, and it does rather feel like this match against New Zealand, the third Test, has a bit more riding on it, not just for the World Test Championship, but they wouldn't want to be rocking up at Perth a couple of weeks after a 3-0 drubbing at home. That is, they're going to have to regroup here.
They have to, and I think the pressure will be on Rohit. I mean, he's has been doing some interesting press conferences of late, and I think he spoke about there being no need for a post-mortem, and he said, let's touch on the 12 years where we did dominate. So 5 days don't decide. I am paraphrasing him here, obviously, but don't decide how our team should be judged. And just with the WTC now, they've left themselves in a position where they'll have to win 4 out of the next 6 tests, 5 of which are in Australia, to be guaranteed a spot, or they'll have to depend on other results. So they've gone from having 1 foot in that final to now, not being fully in control of their own destiny. But in a weird way, Adam, I think most of those batters anyway will be looking forward to coming to Australia after the pitches that they've had to bat on in recent times in India. And it is a fact. I mean, they've really, India's India's weakness against spin, I think it's high time we started calling it a weakness, has been exposed
Mm.
brutally. It's one thing Nathan Lyon doing that to you, but as good a bowler as Mitchell Santner is, someone with one 5 wicket haul in first class cricket, and he was allowed to bowl in a very one day style. I watched most of that game, and India just played into his hands, and so it's a huge concern for them. So I think in a way it's credit to them that they've maintained that a great run, what 18 back-to-back series wins in India, despite going through an era where a lot of their batters struggle against spin, and not so much while attacking spin, but while defending spin in particular. So, but yeah, I mean, they wouldn't want to, come to Australia having lost that series, because the crowd will. The Indian fans are already turning on them. Like you spoke about Ashwin and
Totally.
Jadeja being spent forces, but it's the same. I'm reading about Rohit and Virat. Rohit's average has been
Oh, yeah,
highlighted. The
yeah.
fact that he hasn't averaged more than 33 in the last 1 year, and Virat's not made more than 200s in the last 5 years. So that's how quickly it turns. Rohit Sharma was celebrated, Adam, like just in June as it was the time he finished his story. He was the Cody Rhodes to what Cody Rhodes did at WrestleMania is what Rohit did for India. But it doesn't take too long for that to turn. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those Indian players also want to get on that flight on November 10th and come to Australia just to
Mm.
escape all that attention and scrutiny that's happening right now.
Oh, yeah, the fickleness of the support, which is well easy to see on social media already about Rohit, which just seems bizarre to me. But he'll be leading that squad. Unclear whether he might miss a test early on. I
Hmm.
still don't quite know what the go is. Do you know what the story? I mean, they've announced their squad, but there's still a suggestion that he may not be there at the start, and I can't quite
Hmm.
work out what the through line is there. Like, why is it suggested that Rohit may not play one of the early test matches? Do you know?
I mean, look, when something similar has happened and it's personal news that's used, especially when it's speculative about the future, in India, it's generally meant that probably he's about to become a father for a second time, but it's not official. We've not heard much about it.
Oh,
I mean, that
right,
happened with
right, right,
Virat
right,
as well,
right,
if you
right.
remember, against England, or when he missed the entire series against England. So that's
Yeah.
one thing I've heard, and it's
Okay.
in all likelihood should you'd expect it to be that. So,
All right. I mean,
um,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just thought that if it was something as simple as a birth being imminent, that they wouldn't play the Ducks and Drakes game where it's like, oh
yeah.
well, maybe not. But if it's a privacy thing, then okay, maybe I've just misread the cultural
Hmm.
sensitivity around that. But yeah, Gambia squad, got some Gambia's squad first overseas test matches under his as the new coach. The bits and bobs from this that were noteworthy. Mohamed Shami having bowled at full pace last week, and all the rage being, well, he's back in business. He's not picked at all. I'm really surprised by that, given they've gone to all this effort to say that Shami's getting closer and closer. He won't be in Australia. Norval Pujara, I guess they're just not willing to take the risk on another very senior player, despite his remarkable returns in
Hmm.
Australia the last two times he was there. I know that numerically they weren't gigantic in 2021, but the number of
Hmm.
balls he absorbed in both innings at Sydney and then again on the final day at Brisbane was monumental. All eyes on Kohli, whether he can step up in the whites again for India. We know the last time he played against Australia was a century at Ahmedabad, but that does feel like a time ago now.
Hmm.
No Kuldeep Yadav, which could have been interesting having the wrist spin option. I just assume that's his lower down the pecking order. There's no other reason why
In
he wouldn't be there, Baz.
No, injury. So I
Oh,
think that's
injury.
why
Sorry. Right.
yeah. So he's got a groin thing, which I think needs. He might be going in for surgery, if I'm not mistaken. Or he's going to miss the next few months of cricket. So because otherwise
Okay.
he would definitely have been in that squad. But Washington has come in again, timing
Yep.
and done what he's done at the right time for India. But yeah, he will be a huge miss though.
So we know we've seen Akashdeep bowl in Test cricket before. Prasid Krishna, likewise, tall, quick. So they're looking at players who will be able to. Well, they're trying to pick a team with the depth that could do well in Australia, which stands to reason, I suppose. But they've also gone for some players who don't immediately jump off the page, who aren't
Hmm.
necessarily IPL superstars. Baz, one of whom will be playing this week in the Australia A game as well. So they've got I suppose, the blueprint from where they needed it from time to time in 2018, 2019, and also in 2020, 2021, where they need to bat for long periods of time. And there's no way to replace Pujara necessarily, but having players almost in that mould around and available. So they're guys who aren't necessarily in the one-day team, right?
Yeah, I mean, Abhimanyu Ishwaran is right in that mix. I mean, not an IPL player,
Mm.
which is kind of strange to say about a modern day Indian player. He's 29. He will play his 100th first class match tomorrow when he
Yep.
opens the batting for India A. And he's made 2700s. He's in the old school mold.
Yep.
I mean, you can't compare anyone to Pujara. Pujara is obviously of a higher caliber, but yeah, I mean, he's not your out and out stroke maker. I mean, nothing in comparison to Yashasvi Jaiswal anyway. But he's just broken the door down with consistent, scores year after year. Because I think he probably was challenged for that position by Ruturaj Gaikwad, who we've seen in the IPL,
Mm-hmm.
captain Chennai Super Kings, who's I mean, he was a superstar. He's made hundreds in T20I cricket for India already. So he's been talked up a lot as a future test opener. Devdutt Padikkal, who played one test against England in the middle order, was another option they could have gone with. But I think as a backup opener, probably it's also a sign of how this top four or this batting group has not fired consistently as a unit, much like Australia we discussed earlier, that they've gone for one safe option in Abhimanyu Ishwaran. So he's one, I'm looking forward to seeing. He's been part of a couple of test
Yeah.
squads with India in recent times, but this could well be his big break. But yeah, and with the bowling as well, Prasidh Krishna, you mentioned Harshit Rana. I'm actually
Mm.
excited about Harshit Rana. I saw him for the first time in the IPL. He's not played a lot of first class cricket. There's some talk that he might make his test debut in Mumbai in 2 days' time. But he's
Right.
got that, he's feisty, Adam. He's got that. He's from Delhi originally. He's got that Virat Kohli bite about him, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how he goes here. He might end up playing a test match or two. But how about India? Giving a nod to Pat Cummins' captaincy by picking Nitish Kumar Reddy, the young all-rounder
Mm.
who
Mm.
kind of blossomed under Pat Cummins. So I think that's just Ajit Agarkar and Gautam Gambhir saying, Pat, we acknowledge your captaincy, and because it also tells you that without Mohammad Shami, India will might well be forced to play two spinners. Jadeja
Mm.
will obviously play, but Ashwin might end up playing as well because he's been left out so often when they play away from home, away from the subcontinent. And the only way you can counter that is throwing this young kid into the deep end. And Hardik Pandya was the big white hope, but that's not happened. But if you can get Nitish Kumar Reddy, and he does end up being the superstar that they think he could be, he did take the most number of wickets for his state team last season. So there is something to. It's not just IPL performance, but he is very young, and that kind of sums up this Indian Test squad. There are a lot of unknowns and a lot of selections made more on hope would be pushing it, but yeah, more on just potential rather than just like any proven performance, except Abhimanyu Ishwaran.
Yeah, Ishran, it's interesting. Trying to pick the top six is actually quite difficult. That might be a good thing, right? Like that they're not that the Australians won't have an encyclopedic knowledge of every player they're up against. So it could counterintuitively work in India's favour that they're not as well gelled as otherwise might be the case. Certainly as well gelled as they were when they were in Australia in 2018-19, which was a well-oiled machine. But yeah, Bumrah as the vice captain, such a massive part of the series inevitably. Jaiswal in Australia for the first time, cannot wait for that. Rishabh Pant, of course, back in test ranks after the horrible times that he's endured after that car accident. Sarfraz Khan runs last week. So, there's a bit going on there, and we will document it all very closely through the India A games that are played over the next fortnight as well before the test series. Probably the story of the week, and I know we're coming to it quite late, but it's been such a busy episode so far.